Hey, this is Arjuna Ardagh, and it's right around the end of April now in 2013. I'm really excited because my new book, The Last Laugh, is coming out next week with Hay House. Here it is. I've got an early copy here, The Last Laugh. I've written lots of books, but this is absolutely my favorite. It's really everything I have to offer as a gift is compacted into these 250 odd pages. So I'm going to read to you today from the book. It's a little launch party we can share together. I want to read you a chapter called The Yoga Class. By this point in the book, our hero, Matt, has had a series of kind of awakenings that he was guided into by a retired merchant marine called Joey. And Matt is easily falling into the trap we all fall into of kind of thinking everything's perfect while he's still actually in a process of stabilizing his awakening. So this particular chapter, he is actually married. He's lost his wife and his children and his money and his house and everything else through a series of blunders. But at this point in the book, he's fallen in love with a girl called Sam, and he's under the kind of deluded impression that if he could just hook up with this girl, everything would be okay. Here we go. Sometime after 9, I went back down to Paul's apartment to beg the use of his shower. Incidentally, Matt is staying on the floor of the attic in Paul's apartment building. I opened the door and he just called out to go ahead. While I was getting dressed and shaving, I heard Paul's phone ring. And as I came back into the living room, he was sitting in his bathrobe, sipping coffee. Your old man called, he said. He wants you to go over to his place about 4 o'clock. Oh, I gave him your number. I'm sorry, I replied. Paul said nothing, just scratched himself and messed with something on a shelf. It was Wednesday, no evening meeting. Paul and I drank instant coffee and ate Twinkies together. It had come to this. Then things began to get very clear. I was wasting precious time in distraction. All that mattered, and urgently, was that I be with Sam. That was our destiny. I knew it. She was teaching yoga in less than an hour. No problem. I would go surprise her, and that would be that. Happily ever after. I pictured us proudly announcing our engagement to the assembled students later that day. How could I have missed such a simple solution? My already married status did not even rear its head as an impediment. I jumped up from the breakfast table, excused myself, and got on a bus, heading towards the rest of my life. The class was in a ground floor studio, soft music playing, a statue of the Buddha in the corner, some flowers in a vase at his feet. The floor was covered with coconut matting. There were 10 or 12 people already in the room, with very professional-looking mats rolled out. Most of them were greying women in an all-out war with the aging process. Sam looked surprised to see me, suspicious even, but pointed to a corner and gave me a mat of my own. She wore tight yoga pants and a tight t-shirt, her hair tied back in a ponytail. She taught yoga with the same grace with which she had served coffee and cheesecake on that first night, the same grace she had brought to the minestrone soup. Every moment seemed like ballet. Yoga has never been a primary strength for me. I prefer gentler approaches to caring for the body, like taking hot baths, lying in bed, or receiving massage. Sam soon had us doing things I would not have thought possible or advisable. We had to stretch our legs straight out in front of us and bend forward from the waist. Some of the ladies were kissing their kneecaps in smug flexibility, and as hard as I tried, my knees were still a long way from my head. Next, we lay on our backs and raised our legs and feet up towards the ceiling, then raised up the whole torso, so only head and neck remained on the ground. That was bad enough, way beyond my pain threshold. Every tiny space between every vertebra was announcing revolt. But it did not stop there. It went on and on. We lowered our legs even further behind the head until the feet were touching the ground. That was the idea anyway, and it seemed to work out fine for the ladies with rubber spines. My feet just dangled in midair like a disoriented stick insect. Sam cruised among the urban yogis, murmuring words of encouragement. As she came close, I lowered my feet even further to the floor in a kamikaze bid for her approval. Don't strain, Matt, was all she could offer my heroic self-torture. Would Hawaii suit you for the honeymoon? I tried to reply. Too late, she'd moved on. And what about children? I'm okay to have more. We could discuss it later. We had the rest of our lives. We finished with a balancing posture for which I was truly unprepared. First, we stood on our mats in 2 long lines, one behind the other. Place your feet together, feel your head pulled to the sky as though by a golden thread, Sam said. I relished every word, made mental notes to encourage her to write poetry. Now reach back with the left hand and catch your left ankle. Pull your foot up to the buttocks. I felt a shiver of excitement as she said that word. I love your buttocks, darling, I rehearsed for Hawaii. Stretch your right arm out in front and lean the head and torso forward. Every tiny part of me was now relying on my right ankle to stay upright, and my right ankle was feeling quite unsure of its credentials for the job. Now stretch your left foot and leg out behind you. A very trained foot, proudly adorned in a pristine white sock, appeared perfectly still in midair before me, offered as a challenge from the lady on the next mat up. I was already wobbly before Sam did her tour of the room, but the more desperate I felt to excel at this feat, the more elusive it became. I held out as long as I could, but when it was truly time to abandon hope, raw instinct kicked in. I reached out for the nearest stable object I could find in hopes of staying upright. I grabbed that still and strong white sock. We went down together. I was disappointed in that lady. With all her yogic practice, the perfect outfit and all, I would have expected greater control of her emotions. Her assumption that I had done it on purpose and her quite needless aggression towards me betrayed her yogic training to be very immature. I made a mental note to have a word with Sam about this when we were alone together later. So sorry, I offered as I helped the lady back up to her feet. I trained in partner yoga, you know. In India, more interaction in those schools. She was unimpressed and looked at me as though I was both mad and dangerous. Sam giggled. I winked at her. We would have a good laugh about this later, maybe in bed, gazing out at the sunset, sipping white wine. Organic. So, that was a section from my novel, The Last Laugh. You can buy it on Amazon.com as a paperback book or as a Kindle edition. You can buy it on iTunes as an iBook, and I really hope you will, because this is my favorite book, and I'd love for you to have your own copy. Thanks for listening today.